You try to remember, what about if you open up a bottle to pour out drinks for people? Do you ever remember anything anybody used to do with that bottle?
Well, I'm young.
I always tell my students, I say, talk to the older people, you know? But they will remember some of these things.
Yeah.
Well, what about the brothers on the corner? Now, I don't know what you do down here in South Carolina, right? But in New York, there's certain things that the brothers do when they come together, when they're standing on the corner and they open up a bottle.
Well, see, I don't drink. So that... Well, go ahead.
But let me tell you, missing a lot of our culture, right?
Don't tell me drinking is a part of it.
But when they open up that bottle,
yeah,
they, off the top, they pour some of that out before everybody drinks from it. Now, what do they do that for?
Yeah,
and they will tell you, that's for the brothers who aren't here. Now, those brothers might be in jail. They might just have moved away, whatever. They say that's for the brothers who aren't here. Now, why should they have to pour off some of the drink for the brothers who aren't here? Brothers might be dead, physically. Because they're making a statement and saying that we aren't whole as a group unless they're also here. And we've got to make this statement symbolically that their spirit is among us, because their spirit being among us makes us whole. So what families would do would also be to pour off that, or they might set aside a dish or plate. Now that is giving strength to the group, and it's affirming their definition as a group.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Critical Conversations, a conversation we have once a month about issues that we think are important for our community. So I'm Reverend Dr. Susan Smith, my partner.
Reverend Marcus Tabb. And these critical conversations, our goal is to present issues and ideas that we think are important for us as a faith community to understand.
So tonight we're going to talk about the libation ceremony that we had at our conference in February. It was a beautiful ceremony. And at Proctor Conferences, libation ceremonies are not new. If you've been coming to the conferences, you've seen Reverend Dr. Melva Sampson and Mama Itihari do libations, and we've grown familiar with that type of libation. But this one was different. And it prompted and encouraged a lot of people to ask questions about it, which I thought was good, because it's such it's a delving into our culture one more level, in a time, or in this world where people have been telling us our whole lives, really, we don't have a culture. There's nothing about us that's even important. And so I was very moved by the ceremony, but I was also struck by the questions that were asked. And so this is for you to ask your questions. We really want you to use the Q&A as our guests talk. And I'm hoping I'll do less talking and y'all will do more talking and interacting with Reverend Damien Durr, our new General Secretary, and the Reverend Dr. Gilbert Bouhairie, who is the founder of the GodBox Foundation. And he was the one who was doing this miraculous, wonderful ceremony. So good evening, Dr. Bouhairie and Reverend Damien. It's good to have you here.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
And to just give just a little teeny bit of history, just a tiny bit of history for reference for people so that they'll know, because we as a group really don't know much about our history. So this is an Akan. This was an Akan ceremony. Am I correct, Dr. Bouhairie, from the Akan people? Okay.
Yes.
So the Akan are a major West African ethno-linguistic group, and they number over 25 million, primarily in southern Ghana and parts of Cote d'Ivoire and Togo. They're known for a historical golden civilization, and they formed powerful states like the Ashanti Empire. Their society is historically matrilineal, and they are famous for kente cloth, gold weights, and adinkra symbols. That gives you kind of a little reference of who they are. They have been in existence since about the 12th century. Is that correct? About the 12th century. And they created numerous states based on gold mining and trade, and they maintained power from the 15th to the 19th centuries. And then they operated as a powerful empire that resisted European self-colonization. I love that part. I could just say that over and over again. So, they're part of us. If you've been to Africa, if you've been to Ghana, I don't know if it's been your experience, but it was mine when I went first, every time I go. But it's like seeing all your relatives. You go there and you see people and you say that could be Aunt Boo and that could be Uncle Harry, and because we see each other in each other's faces. I love the hospitality and the love and the graciousness of the people. If you look like you're hungry, they're gonna give you something to eat. They will invite you to their homes and you will eat. The kindness. I don't know. I just met a woman in Charlotte, North Carolina, who's from Ghana, and she said that her family, were raised Christian, and their family units are so tight. And she said with her family, every night at 9 o'clock, her whole family prays together. That's the kind of people we come from, and I just think that's exciting. So that was just a little snippet of stuff about the Akan civilization, the Akan people that this libation ceremony originates from. And I learned that different groups have different libation ceremonies. So we're not going to get into all of that. We're just going to concentrate. Just start with a question for you, Dr. Bouhairie. Why was this particular libation ceremony important for this occasion?
Wow, that's a good one. Thank you for that question. And first and foremost, I want to give thanks to the Most High God for allowing us all to be here, and to the ancestors upon whose shoulders we stand. I want to thank our Queen Mother Naraba, Ben's Mother first, and Baba J, all the leaders, to my brother and leader, Reverend Damien Durr, and to you, Reverend Susan, for having me and hosting me. When I first got the call to do the opening libation for the Proctor Conference, obviously that was an extremely humbling and humbling moment. I was quite nervous, actually, considering what the moment meant, because again, when you're being called to pour libation, especially to open a ceremony, what you're really being asked to do is kind of create a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms, and that's no easy task, right? And so understanding what that meant when you're calling upon the ancestors, if Proctor's asking for us to call upon the ancestors in Saman Full, to invoking the spiritual witnesses, and sealing the prayers with some spiritual authority. That really just gives the context of the position that I was being brought into. And just before I get into that question, I wanted to just give some context on my own spiritual authority, being born in New York, two Ghanaian parents, coming from a royal family. Right here, even before I moved to Ghana or even went to Ghana, I was surrounded by libations all throughout my life, especially in my youth, being a baby in New York, right in Midtown Manhattan. And you can imagine my parents and family members come, it's the task for the royal families to uphold these traditions regardless of where they are geographically. And so every ceremony, all I remember all throughout my childhood, especially in New York, right in Manhattan, Midtown, pouring libation everywhere we went. I remember my father, Hani Bouhairie, he was also responsible for bringing not only Ghanaians to the diaspora, but also royalties as well. And I remember at JFK Airport when he was bringing the Cape Coast King, and for the first time. And at JFK, you had the carpet, and you had all the priests pouring all the libation out. The whole time I was wondering, like, who's cleaning this up, right? We're seeing all these white folks there, police, security, and nobody's doing anything. Everybody's just watching the libation. So libation was always something that was pretty significant in my life. And then when I went to Ghana, apparently I was told that I had my own spiritual bathing and when I was 2 years old. I don't really recall that, but that's what I was told. So when I started my dreads, while I started my dreadlocks more on a Rastafarian kind of tip, and in those days I was about 15, 16. I remember majority of my family and majority of Ghanaians never even associated the dreadlocks with Rastafarians or anything like that. They associated it with spiritual power. And they were asking, they always used to say, oh, you want to be an akonfo now, which means in Ghana, you want to be a spiritual priest now. And actually, that was quite annoying because I was trying to be on a Rasta tip and they kept on talking about, spiritual leadership and being a spiritual priest. My mom, who was Methodist at the time, and most Christians kind of frowned upon the dreadlocks because of what it represented as being a traditional priest. And so when I finally started to grow my dreads out, and in the family, when you have dreads in Africa and Ghana, you're immediately associated with being like the priest of the family. And so I was, pouring libations at some of these family gatherings and naming ceremonies and others. And then also on the tours, obviously going through seminary and all of that kind of helped with my theological emphasis on the libation. So I just wanted to give that kind of context because, again, it's important to note the kind of authority that you need to have in these kind of spaces. And so when my brother, Reverend Damien, gave me the call, gave me the instructions that, we wanted this to be quite African-centered and really represent what Proctor is about right now in this moment. I knew that I would have to focus in on the theological emphasis of African spirituality and make sure that we show that there is no contradiction between the African spirituality and the faith itself that we practice within the biblical tradition. So I really felt that it was, going back to your question, I really felt that it was important to use that opportunity to show what it looks like in this kind of Sankofa moment where it's a Sankofa hermeneutic of returning and reclaiming and seeing that being practiced live so that you can see what it looks like, not in a sense of doing something new, but actually restoring and reclaiming something that we've always practiced before, and kind of, the memory, part of the remembering and going back and reclaiming and seeing what that looks like. I thought Proctor, especially given the significance of this particular conference being the sacred fire, the theme of sacred fire, and then also the commencing of new leadership as well. I think it was important to show what the tradition actually looks like when it's being practiced in an unapologetically African way within the Christian tradition.
So you succeeded in that because it was mesmerizing to see it. Reverend Damien, so you approached Dr. Bouhairie and you asked him to be a part of this important part of your life. You approached him, and did you know what you were getting into?
Well, thank you. Well, let me say again, thank you so much, Reverend Sue. Glad to see Dr. Wright with us, and thank all of you for being on with us tonight. Well, me and Dr. Carruthers were having a conversation about conference, and she suggested that I reach out to Gilbert, and based upon having obviously had an opportunity to meet him last year, and then of course had the opportunity to go over to Ghana to be a part of her installment. So obviously having an opportunity to get to know Gilbert a little more, we had established a relationship. So when she made that recommendation, I immediately agreed, and then of course reached out to Dr. Gilbert, and we then began a conversation about the libation, and he asked for reference, which we shared. Obviously, you mentioned Reverend Sue when Dr. Sampson, Mama Itahari had done libations previous, so we shared that information as Gilbert began to think about how it would look, and then we stayed in conversation about this moment, about where we are in the world, about the uniqueness of what Proctor represents, the legacy of Dr. Proctor and the legacy of our founders, combined with Dr. Carruthers' new installment. We wanted to be very intentional about creating space for the ancestors. And my own understanding, knowing that one, all the leadership roles that I've been privileged to have, one, you didn't get there by yourself, and having been sustained by those who were present, but also knowing that the ancestors have been critical for sustaining me in previous roles, and knowing what was needed, which was something different, I think, at this particular moment in time, based upon what we are up against at this moment, and then just based upon what it means to take on this new role of stewardship and leadership. My objective was, I need all the spiritual help, all the spiritual power, all the spiritual insight, all the spiritual wisdom, all the spiritual discernment that I could get my hands on. And so that was a part of our conversations as it pertains to the value of this moment. And what I was able to experience going to Ghana last year was a different kind of spiritual orientation, or a different kind of spiritual power, shall I say, having gone to Kemet, but being in Ghana, experiencing that and wanting to see how we could help invoke that in the space here, as we would be moving into this very serious and important leadership role.
So you had a full idea or full knowledge of the type of ceremony this would be?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't have a full idea, but I knew he understood, because it was a part, as he just shared, right, his own journey, his orientation. And so I was trusting his spiritual authority, and trusting how serious I know he takes this work, and how serious he takes the invitation. So I was putting myself in position to be open to that which he would come back with concerning how it would look.
You know, it was so interesting. Like I said, I've only seen the libations that we've done at Proctor, and I've always seen the liquid as water, you know, water in the plant, and that I've all. But as I've read about it and looked into it, I've learned that the ritual pouring the liquids can be wine or water or oil or milk. I didn't know all that. And it's done as a sacrificial offering, and the liquid serves as the fundamental theological bridge, I guess, between the physical and the spiritual realms. Cosmologically, it maps the relationship between humans, ancestors, and deities. And so I poked around a little bit more and saw that, white folks who went and did the missionary thing in Africa, they thought that it was pagan. And it was, but then somebody pointed out that the Roman Catholics have some of that same type of thing, so that kind of shut it down. But for us as people, the calling together and the calling out to the ancestors, even without seeing what I saw, it's always very powerful. What was your experience, Reverend Damien, when you realized that you were standing really in a holy place, and Reverend Dr. Gilbert was calling the ancestors forward? I mean, I could feel it. What did you feel when you went through that?
Oh, I mean, and as me and Dr. Gilbert have spoken, one is the sign, the banner, right? The banner, that the sacred fire banner that was there, right? We had the ancestors, right, pictured on that banner this year. So it was, for me, in part, it was one, just thinking about the trajectory of my own life in some regards, as you ask questions about how did this happen. And so there's some of that that's taking place. And then there is a tremendous amount of gratitude just for being in a position to experience God doing something powerful, that I never anticipated and or never expected. So it was not a nervousness, but just a sense of serious gratitude, and a sense of feeling the power of the ancestors in the space. And I could sense that differently. A couple years ago, I attended a workshop, and we were there with Rachel Harding, Vincent Harding's daughter, and she was there with my Val, who was the pastor of a Condo Blay church, and she was looking at me and she was speaking in Portuguese, and Rachel interpreted what she said, and she was saying, tell him that he has an ancestral presence around him, that he needs to communicate with more. And so, as a result of that, which happened some years ago, I started to try to be more intentional about making that a part of my prayers, in terms of saying to the ancestors, I have an open hand, an open heart, and an open hand to receive that which they wanted to share. And in that moment, I could feel, having initiated that practice years ago, that even coming to bear a different way for me in that moment. And so feeling undergirded and strengthened by the power of them in that space.
You know, that calling on the ancestors is a power in and of itself. I remember when we were in Richmond several years ago for the conference, and we were near that prison where Black folks had been held. I forget the name of it. And Reverend Melva was kneeling in the field next to that structure, and she was wailing and she was holding her hands up, and it was like you could almost see, the ancestors come. It was the most moving thing that I had seen. I'm only saying that to say that too few of us recognize the power and the strength of our ancestors and all that they've gone through, and that strength that they give to us. And we just call on them, it's powerful. Reverend Gilbert or Dr. Gilbert, you used wine is in this as the liquid. I think you used wine, and I've only seen water. Why did you use wine as the liquid for the libation in this particular ceremony?
Yeah, I use gin. I use something called schnapps. It's a traditional alcoholic beverage in Ghana that's specifically used for libation.
Okay.
Whilst you were talking about the different kinds of libations and the different liquids that are often used, it makes me think about not just the video that you showed just before we started, where you see how some of these libations are done and have kind of changed over time, considering the context and the cultures, and how folks have disguised certain things, libations, under oppression. But with the libation, something as simple as like a naming ceremony in Ghana, just to give you some context of how specific these and how important what you use is. In our naming ceremonies, for instance, we're supposed to use the gin, which is what we use. Our cons always use the gin, because of how clear it looks like, and it's similar to water, right? It looks like water, but it's not. And what you do in the naming ceremony is there's a ritual where that takes place. Proctor has and Brother Damien has also taken part in this ritual where when you're pouring the alcohol, you pour the alcohol first, and you ask the participant, the person that's getting named, to taste it and announce and claim that it's alcohol, right? And then they give you water, and then they ask you to claim what it is. Is this water? And the idea behind that is that you want to show that the gin and the water look the same, but they're different, and they have two different effects on you. And so what's interesting is now in Ghana, you have a lot of Christians that are more westernized in their approach, that are trying to take out the alcohol, the gin, out of it, and then substitute that with Coke or Fanta or something else, whatever liquid. And again, we have a lot of our traditional priests that are saying, no, once you do that, you completely miss the whole point of the ritual, and you take away the idea of what it is. And that's what you see all throughout our history, is where as we keep moving forward, we oftentimes we're our African retentions, we're trying to hold on to these things and they're looking so differently. When I was watching the video, it reminded me of the series Roots, this new series that has come out that shows how since first generation enslaved Africans came on the continent, majority of our folks holding on to the African traditions, also understanding the faith that is coming from the scriptures, and trying to all throughout the series, you see how from each generation they're trying to hold on to these African traditions, but as time goes on, and from each generation, you see them kind of losing maybe some of the wording that was used, or maybe forgetting some of the practices that were supposed to be used in a certain particular ritual or ceremony. And then at the end, you see so many things that have been lost, but there's still this understanding that something must be done ritually to again respond to the cloud of witnesses that we understand are our ancestors that are always there as elders in the spiritual community. So even with libation, you always have to explain that you're not praying to the ancestors, but you're calling upon them to be witnesses to seal the whatever authority that you have in the prayer. And so the use of the jinn was very important. I think I said in the video that I was coming straight from Ghana, so I made sure to bring those snap bottles with me because of the importance of the ceremony and what it means. And I think I also explained during it that because it's alcohol, it's already considered a spirit. And so if you don't use alcohol, then from the Akan space, you're actually speaking. It's the way in which you are kind of inspiring the spirits to come and join in. So when I'm pouring the alcohol and I say Bejewunsa, that means come and take your sip of the alcohol. And that's important for bringing together the ancestors to surround. So as you said, I think you said, it's about community. It's not just about the living. It's not just about those that are our ancestors, but it's also about those that have come together in communion for the praying.
So, and we're going to show a clip in a second, but so is that calling into community, the ancestors, is that done more effectively with the schnapps than with water?
I can't answer that question. I've never used water. I've never used water, so I'm not sure the power that comes from it. But water is pretty powerful, and so, but I've never used that during libation. We've only used snaps, so I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I'm pretty sure there's some significance to the water as well.
Okay. And we're going to show a clip. Loretta, if you have our first clip of what happened in the ceremony, please.
The spirit I'm carrying has come to this conference. And when I say I go and you say amen, what that means is that I want to see if you're going to invite this spirit in. I'm here, I've come to your home. These are your grounds. And so the spirit is asking, I go. If you don't respond, then it means you don't want me here. Then the spirit cannot come in. But when I say I go and you say amen, then that means that you have invited me in. Now I can come inside and dwell with you. And then you with me. Together we can come together as one family, the Pan-African family. First, I have to remove my sandals. Because like Moses, I stand on holy grounds. And it takes a huge amount of humility to be able to do this. It's not by my power, not by my might, but by the Spirit of the Most High. As you can see, this is the snaps straight from Ghana. You can see the kente on it. And we're not playing. Now this is the alcohol. We believe that the alcohol is a spirit. And whenever you take this alcohol in, whatever is in your mind, that's what's going to manifest. And so before I pray and pour this libation, we got to make sure that our minds are right. I also have to knock on the alcohol, make sure that the Spirit allows me to come in. Trey John Pon Kwame. I want a boss run near Sase. The Charwon sa, Nanto Numen sa. To the Most High God, who created the heavens and the earth. We show you our spirit, but you don't drink the Spirit. You might, back on the continent, yeah, enslaved Africans are Abrofun, the wicked people, what befayen? What country no do what to buy, ha? Your friend in what by so what queen? The Nathanaels of the world. Denmark versus Yasan to us, the two sons. One in one bra, yeah, one bra, no one with one son. A Jume or son. Okodo. The your friend. Yeah, Papa no ma, once so by ya, once so start resilience in the resistance in. Marcus Garvey mu, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X mu, Harriet Tubman mu. One in one bra, yeah, here one. One so one Jim one son no. Yeah, Okodo. Yeah, Papa no massage for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, Crawford, Patrice Lumumba, Winnie Mandela. One so what BB mine, one so what coin, one in one bra. Gentlemen, we can't call all their names, but they should bring their friends.
We could have played some more of that. You called a lot of names in that portion of the ceremony. Did you feel, I don't know, I know that we had the pictures up and all that, but did you feel some type of urging or encouragement or something from within or without that? Because I got the feeling that you had some names, but you said a whole bunch more names. I got a feeling than you were going to say. Was that kind of like a spontaneous, a spiritual connecting thing that just kind of pushed you and kept those names coming out for you?
Absolutely. There's, you can only prepare, but so much. And then once you're in the moment and in that spirit, everything that happened, from even the setup, how, to, I know me and brother Reverend Damien, we were, talking about a couple of things, but once you get in that moment, spirit kind of takes over. I also had to go back and kind of watch to see what some of the things that I said. I wanted to, I know as I was coming in, I wanted to translate a little bit more. But, once you get into the spirit, I realized that at some point I stopped translating and I was using certain moments to kind of say something in English just so that the folks can follow, where I was at in the prayer. But for the most part, it wasn't, there was some folks that I knew I had to mention, in the prayer. But again, looking at the opportunity that was there to, again, bring all of the ancestors. Some folks that were even from Ghana that watched the libation were interested in some of the folks that I was mentioning. Now, oftentimes, maybe even from that side of the continent, maybe they may not have mentioned, right? But then bringing all of this together and showing again that there is no contradiction, that we can mention some of our biblical fathers and Abrahamic traditions, and I really wanted to go through the Pan-African warriors, the heroes, the intellectuals, really call upon them. And I think at some point, as you see, I realized I can't, there's so many of them, I can't call all of them, but they should bring their friends because they're all in communion with each other and they all understand the purpose of this ceremony.
I felt that energy really. I thought, sometimes when people preach and they have a manuscript and they're just doing and then they start doing something and it's not on the manuscript. So I know Reverend Damien knows that because he does that even in our staff meetings. He'll have the agenda and then all of a sudden he's going someplace else. But Reverend Damien, while you were watching Dr. Bouhairie do this and name the names, what were you feeling? Can you recall?
Well, one of the things that I had a unique privilege of, in terms of just even being exposed to African spirituality, just in terms of broadening my own theology, was based upon my time in Nashville and spending time with Dr. Bouhairie, who also was a student of Jacob Carruthers. And Dr. Bouhairie was over African American Studies Department at Murfreesboro State University. But as a result of knowing Dr. Bouhairie and a group of other men, we used to participate in sweat lodges with brothers. And so he is a Yoruba priest. And so it was a ceremony that took place of us heating rocks up, cutting the wood, building a sweat lodge out of PCV pipe, as well as tarps, and then blankets, and it was a whole all day thing. And I participated in a multitude of these services. And so that years ago gave me a broader perspective of just in terms of the spirit realm, but also just African spirituality. And so as Dr. Gilbert was obviously speaking, and I mean translating at one point, but then obviously speaking the language, it was just kind of, for me, it was just a continuum of that experience, which gave me just a different openness to different ways of experiencing the divine. And it was a kind of a reclaiming. I felt kind of a reclaiming, based upon what our theme was: resistance, resilience, and response. I felt like a reclaiming that was happening as I was kind of listening to him, and watching, because it was both, and to your point, Reverend Sue, it was what I was hearing, but it was also just watching the space and watching him engage in a way that I could tell that spirit was present and that he was in a different space. Because I saw him in a different space, having spent time with him in previous space. I was experiencing him in his spiritual authority in a manner that was powerful.
There's a question I'm going to lift up from the people who are watching, but I just want to say that the relationship with ancestors is something that too few of our people, I think, have. And I remember realizing that when we were doing Kwanzaa in my church some years ago, we were doing libations, and we were asking people to call out the names of some of their ancestors, and most of them couldn't go past their grandparents. I thought, boy, we gotta, that's something, because it kind of, I don't know, it just felt strange that that's all, because that's not all who we are. We are here because all these other people before us who poured into us, even though we were not yet here. And the fact that people did not know past their grandmother or grandfather, really, it really did something to me. Anyway, this question from one of our people says, will you say more about the spiritual authority? And number two, how do we know which ancestors to call on? Dr. Bouhairie.
Yeah. So again, first is recognizing the space and the audience, I think is important. As I said, maybe the way I would do the libation, maybe in Ghana, considering the audience and the context, would be different from how I did it at Proctor. But so taking the audience into consideration, again, as Reverend Damien said, some of our conversations that we had, and also with our Queen Mother Nana Abba, and just understanding, I'm myself, I consider myself a child of Proctor as well, and so understanding what the spirit of Proctor is about, and as we're moving forward, and again, using the opportunity. I first looked at it as an opportunity for to really show what it looks like when we do reclaim, when we are on this Sankofa journey of reclaiming and restoring, what the African traditions looks like when it is practiced within the faith, the biblical faith. Again, libation has always been a biblical act of worship, and a drink offering. And so maybe if I was standing somewhere else with a different religious group or different, I might have called upon some different ancestors, in that space or in that moment. But I understood that there are some ancestors that you have to call upon, no matter what, regardless of the space that you're in. And then you call upon some of the cloud of witnesses that want to show up, that would like to be a part of considering the group and the space and the context. And so that was kind of what initially informed me. And then, as I said, during the libation, as Brother Reverend David said, you kind of get lost in it. I'm trying to figure out who that is, at some point, because of, and so some of the names that you mentioned, they kind of come, you're inspired. We like to think that, they want to be there, and that's why they're kind of nudging you to mention names as well. So I really would say that it's important to take your audience into consideration through experience. I know you don't go everywhere and speak the same way. It's important for you to take into account the people that you're addressing, and so that was what kind of informed me as I was going through the libation.
Another question from the people who are listening. He says, do you call upon the ancestors whose gifts you need in the moment?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And Proctor, again, I was, as you can see, I started with our biblical forefathers and ancestors. That was something that even in Ghana isn't often done in that way. But again, while we were in this Pan-African Renaissance where we're talking about what we're reclaiming and how the faith, which I always say is important, especially in these spaces, for those who may struggle with the libation or the calling of the ancestors, that it's important to separate the faith from the institution of Christianity. And once you do that and you're using the faith, you can call upon some of these biblical ancestors who are part of our African traditions, the Hebrew traditions and culture. So they are our ancestors who we call upon. In some spaces in Ghana, religious groups, they do call upon some of these biblical ancestors. So I definitely knew I had to start off there, and then call upon, because it's Proctor, we got intellectuals and theologians, activists, and so many ancestors. So I think I kind of went through like kind of each category of Pan-African heroes and leaders throughout, that have done the work, and have paved the way. And as I always say, whose shoulders upon we stand. And so when we're in a space like that, it's important to call upon them. And as I said, you don't want, if just like how we are, if we know we've done a lot of the work and we're not called upon, we might feel a certain kind of way. So that's why that part of, bring in your friends, that part was probably the most important part of the whole, because you do want to make sure that you get everybody as part of the witnesses, because you understand the journey. And I kept on saying something in the Fanti language, that Jumanusu, enunciation, which means that the path and the job and the work and the mission, the purpose is heavy. What we have as Proctor, and the mission and the vision where we're trying to go is heavy. And so we need to call upon some of the ancestors that we know are good for it, for good at the battle, and have fought the battle and have been there, to continue to join us from the spiritual space, as we go through and still wrestle with some of our issues.
And can I just add to what Reverend Gilbert said? And one of the things that we talked about is the Proctor being intentional about foregrounding Pan-Africanism. And so we were talking about how this was a continuum, right, of what Proctor has been intentional about, knowing that Dr. Wright was installed 30 years ago, and obviously Dr. Carruthers being installed recently. So it was an intentionality to foreground what has been unique and distinct about who Proctor is, and about what Proctor has believed about the significance and importance of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism, just thinking about our panel last year with Ambassador Battle, and then even the Pan-African panel that we had this year. And Dr. Gilbert is a student of Dr. Cone as well. And so just the whole liberative theology, liberation theology, and African spirituality, it was also important as we talked about what Proctor's been committed to, and knowing what we are navigating through, and knowing what the leadership role requires. We wanted to be intentional about Pan-Africanism being central, and having an opportunity to go to Panafest last year during the installment. I had an opportunity, right, to see folks from all the diaspora from all over the world, and then even experience Pan-Africanism in Ghana a different way. So that was, all of that was still kind of, I think, pushing us towards what we shared.
Curious, what ancestors in your own life were you thinking of when Dr. Bouhairie was naming ancestors? Did any personal ones come up?
Well, some, to your point, familial. Obviously, my grandfather and father, grandmother, and others in my family. My aunt, who had passed last year, Mr. Gus Newport, who many know that shares the same birthday with Dr. Carruthers, and his relationship with Malcolm, and all of those conversations that we had, and others that I knew. And then there are people like, obviously, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Mary McLeod Bethune, Du Bois, obviously stays on my mind often. So those were just some of the names that were kind of in my space at the time, and thinking about what they represented. Garvey, right? Thinking about what they represented, thinking about this moment, and thinking about the need to draw upon their wisdom, their courage, their fearlessness, and their relentlessness for such a time as this.
There's such a power in calling on the ancestors, and I felt like Dr. Bouhairie, like you were like great big doors to an incredibly legend-filled hall was being opened or something, and all these people were there. I mean, I just really felt that. And I also, going back to the fact that I don't know that enough of us know who our ancestors are. I have had some experiences in dedicating babies when, and I would, when, behold, the only one greater than yourself, hold it up from roots and all that. And I would start naming ancestors, but you know what? I didn't get to name as many as I want because I got plugged up. Does that make sense? I wanted to name like 1,000 of them, and I get to maybe 6. I say, shoot up. I don't know anymore. Maybe it's because I had the baby up. I don't know. But I think that represents kind of a separation that I have maybe between who I am in this country and who I am as a woman of African descent, and that immersion in our culture that we all need to have, that I didn't have growing up, but that I'm trying to do more now. I think that's so important. And I think as even as I recognize the people in our congregation who didn't know anybody past their grandmothers, it just speaks to something, a project maybe that we need to engage in to get our people more connected to that, because otherwise we're just like in this country, like stool pigeons almost sometimes because of the things that are done and all that. But our ancestors give us the strength that the world cannot take away. And I think that we just need to maybe concentrate on maybe doing that. I see that Mama Elaine is in here. I could see her being a teacher, telling us, showing us how to do that. But I just think it's so important, because when you went off on all those names, I said, this brother is no longer in this space. He's somewhere. His body is here, but he done gone someplace else. And I just loved it. We have another clip that we need to show. Loretta, do you have that one ready?
The dumb secret fire. What's it? Dumb conference. One painful one and one will go here. In painful now, over 23 years ago, what started dumb conference? You wonder what's name? Yeah, Papa. Reverend Jeremiah Wright. I had it. I'm called no ball who by Omawan. Ayiko. Or Kodo. Yam Papa. Reverend Dr. Frederick Haynes. What's why I did? I'm called no ball who by. Yes, Ayiko Jounsa. Now, yeah, mommy. Dr. Ivor Carothers, Reverend Dr. Ivor Carothers. She said, "One friend of Dr. Iva Correctus Biom. Ina Kogana, your homeland. Why and Queen Mother of the whole Cape Coast. Baby, I am a nanum fee. She said, our friend. Nana Abba Bentuma the first. Ayade, Ayiko, Jonsa. Ne, last year was it? Legacy meets future. This year was a future and waba. Onunyi, young papa, Reverend Damien C, Porcho, Brabejina. Papaya or be, or you're bright. That means the future is bright. Now, Ajane. Nananum someone funny now, your friend one there one brain. Under the auspices of Wawum paying for leaders and Janaye. Ne soon now your friend one there one bra. And that you're the best show mu. You're just show moi. In your mountain. To me, your friend to me, J. From Huban. A kukudra, your friend, a kukudru. Jennifer Bouhairie. Nyansa, your friend, and Nyansa, so Jennifer Bouhairie. Assessing ya start. Nina, your friend, Nina, there to me one brand, no one for Samuel DeWitt. Then there's Ghanaian, the Jumano so. Now to assume, into Ghanaian found calling him. Ata, Ayade. I say amen, but we are not done. I brought a second bottle. This second bottle is because we know that thou prepared the table before us in the presence of our enemies. Ochere, your enemies in Wawaha. The enemies are here. And soon on Peroba, and see one way do my end. Cock, Ombra, Yasu. Not you guys, those that are coming. No enemies here, those that are coming. Also, one J one son because what's the day? Adrian Fina Okitobia or dumb conference, you know. Any wicked mind, any evil, we pour it here. It will never come to this side. Blessings now, you're judging him, what dumb conference, you just somewhere. Into Adrian Fina, evil ones, and one J1 son, one fan call her, Yasay Bibiawa, one fan call, Ye, Ashe, Amen. Bless her. Bless her.
Yeah,
I'm as stunned now as I was then.
that was something.
So first of all, Dr. Bouhairie, what were you saying?
There's so much
I know.
that
When you
is
spit
happening.
it and you said what you said and you hit his chest, what were you saying?
Oh, well, yeah, that part was understanding we had called upon all the ancestors. We had called upon their energies, the power, the spirit. And so basically everything that we had called upon, I said, now what we're doing is we're going to instill all the ancestors, all the power into him. And it was important to speak, there's so much I want to say about that, but there's important to where for him to be able to open up himself. And as you can see with the spraying of the alcohol from breath to spirit, into his soul, in his sumsum, his spirit, his soul. And so the chest is important, where the heart and the soul is, the sumsum, the ikra, the soul is. And so what I was saying was calling upon all the answers. Every time I sprayed the alcohol, the breath to spirit into the soul, was just, to just further confirm that now the ancestors are in him. All the ancestors that we spoke about, the power, I called upon the courage, I called upon wisdom, called upon the strength, the power, I used certain things and said and called upon certain energies to ensure that all of that was instilled in him as a leader. And again, oftentimes you do libations and you kind of leave it there. But considering the significance of the conference, considering that there was a transition that was happening at the conference from our spiritual leaders, because again, I also got some advice as well with some of the traditional priests in Cape Coast and Ghana, that certain things cannot be left just at the libation. Especially if there is a kind of transitioning, and this is how it needed to be from, so again, there's so much to talk about, because, you mentioned something about being in the holy place. And, in retrospect, when I think about it, that whole setup was interesting. And I remember our sister Pam, when we, the night before, we were talking about even the cross and whether the cross should even be on the table or not. Initially, we were going to take it off. And, something spiritual is like, no, we should leave it there, right? And then even it starts with the fire, just lighting the fire, all of that initially kind of came up on that day, understanding the theme of where it's at. And so when you look at the setup, I had mentioned to Dr. Karata's edition there, when you look at the setup, it sort of shows a kind of Ark of the Covenant kind of space, where in the front you have kind of the outer court, right, where the altar of the burnt offering, and so the candle lit, that was the sacred fire that represented the sacred fire, and that burning of the cleansing and the sacrifice of the burnt offering in the front of the cross. And then when you get into the holy place, it's kind of the golden lampstand, that cross that was right there even before you get into the Holy of Holies where the priest is. And all of this, you can't make it up. It's kind of like it's just happening, and then you see it, how it was. And even when I called upon, what's interesting is what started happening spiritually, and this is where I kind of became conscious within the subconscious, as I was doing, I realized that, and you see it in the clip that you showed, that after we instilled the spirit and the ancestors into Reverend Damien as the new leader, I knew I had to call to reference, or at least make mention of the enemies, because they are always there, and that's why I quoted that biblical verse. And it wasn't in any way to curse them or anything. What I was saying there was that we recognize that they're always there, and we leave them to God. So we release them on this side, that whatever we're doing. But you saw the resistance actually from the beginning, with even taking the bottle out the box. I was struggling with that. So you saw me like kind of ripping it up, while I was doing it. And then what was really spiritual that really caught my eye was, when I was trying to open the bottle. And the first time with the first bottle, I mentioned that I also have to knock. It's a knocking that you have to do before to let the spirit allow you to enter. And so in the beginning, I did that, and everything went smooth. But this is where, whilst you're in the spirit, as I called, when I referenced the enemies, there was some resistance that came immediately with spiritually with the bottle, with the box. And then when I was trying to open the bottle, I realized I couldn't open it. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, this is what I'm thinking in the moment. That like, wow, this is like they really fighting this. And I said it in the language. I didn't even realize I'd said it out loud. But I said won't put it with. So and I didn't realize I'm using my own mic here to kind of open this bottle, right? And it wasn't opening. And my sister Deborah that was standing on the side, thank God she was standing on the side. Because she alerts me and she says, call, call, call. And you see me like look at her, I can't hear her, but I hear like her whispering. And she's reminding me that you have to knock. Remember, you forgot to knock. You forgot to knock, to allow the spirit to let you in. So that's when you see me that, I kind of knock again, and then immediately it opens up. And it's funny because these things happen, like in Ghana, for instance, those snap bottles are really tricky. And once you try to twist it and it doesn't open, it's almost impossible to open. You got to find like a knife or something to kind of cut it open. And the whole time, while it wasn't opening, I'm wondering like, where the hell am I going to get a knife from? This is going to mess up this whole ceremony. And it's not a good look now that I'm called the enemies, and now this happens. So that right there actually was, for me personally, was confirmation of what was happening, how spiritual it was. Everything was so. I mean, I can go on to all these little details, but that part specifically was something that let me know that there was something really spiritual happening here, and there was confirmation that we were on the right path.
Reverend Damien, what were you feeling when he was saying all that and doing the spray, from breath to spirit and all that, and hitting your chest? What were you thinking?
Well, obviously we had a conversation prior to, based upon the instructions that he had been given. So when we talked the night before, and he made me aware of the fact of what they had shared with him, really kind of at that point, I was prepared to subject myself to what that would mean. And so it was, for me in the moment, it was more about trying to be as present as possible, and open as possible, because it got to the point where I wasn't even really thinking anymore. It was just being present and receiving what was happening, and being as unapologetic and being as open as possible to I didn't want anything to block what was the main thing. Was I didn't want anything to block or deter that which I was what I needed to be in reception of. And for me, it was understanding the gravity of any leadership role, as I said, but understanding the gravity of this leadership role just put me in a different space of transparency, authenticity, and preparation, and knowing that this was just a part of that, in a way that was reconnecting me back to the roots. So for me, it was more about being open to what this reconnection would mean, and the power that was kind of coming to me. And so just trying to be as receptive. So that was the main thing I was feeling, just being as receptive as possible.
And just to add to that, we're talking about power. We're looking at the clip. It's funny because when I said Janaye, and you kind of immediately kind of positioned yourself, it's almost as if you understood what I said, because that what Janaye means is like stand strong, right? So stand strong, and all these things. It was funny, I thought I was gonna interpret this, all throughout, but I guess it just happened the way it happened. But so you really looked like you stood up strong and kind of was prepared. It was funny is, I didn't realize how strong the alcohol was. So I was telling you to stand strong. When I took the alcohol, poured it, I was like, oh my God, he saw me and kind of went through. went through, but I had to switch up a little bit. It's like, I'm about to pass out. I'm telling you to stand strong. So I mean, but that, these are some of the things that are going on in the background, through this whole entire process. So there is some humor that the Spirit oftentimes comes with as well.
And Reverend Michael said my DNA knew what to do, which was a great point I had not considered. And I think it's so important. So thank you, Reverend Mike, for sharing that. And having been primed by different spiritual experiences, I think obviously some of us look at different things because we've never been exposed to, or I've never been maybe in an environment where there were different ways in which I experienced the Spirit. I at least have been fortunate in some ways and look forward to ways in the future. But having had different spiritual experiences, for me, it was a part of that process, and it was no. I don't see any contradiction in it. Gilbert put together a panel when we were in Ghana, and the title was Spiritual Contradiction or Divine Convergence, right? When we were talking about Pan-Africanism and what that means for those of us who are in the diaspora and what it meant in terms of those who were in Ghana. And so that's another, I think that's important in terms of one's exposure to different things prior to, and which I think allows you to be more open to the ways in which the Spirit may show up, the ways in which the divine may want to deposit into you, and sometimes how we can sometimes be barriers to that because it doesn't look like what I've been used to, it doesn't feel like what I've been used to, so I may subconsciously be creating a barrier that could be detrimental to that which I need to receive from the Spirit. And so that was another thing that for me, being open to that based upon previous experiences.
As you're explaining, Dr. Bouhairie, what you were saying, when you were pounding on his, well, not pounding, but hitting his chest, putting that power in it, that's a very powerful image. That is very, that the spray, cemented by your hand on a person's chest, that is a very, very powerful image. And as you were talking, I was thinking about how powerful it would be if some of our little kids, our little boys, could go through a libation service like that, so that they could be, we saw a clip, we're into featuring Black lives, we're working on featuring Black lives, and there's so much to that, but one of the most powerful things we saw is this people sitting around a table and everybody had a kid on their lap, but it wasn't their kid, and they're building community, and I coupled that with a clip that Bill Cosby did years ago, where these little kids had been taught who they were, and somebody was trying to pull them off of who they were. So the little boy would say, the interviewer would say, "What is your name?" The kids would say, "My name is Kevin." "Your name isn't Kevin." Little boy, they were like 4 or 5 years old. The little boy would stop and say, "No, my name is Kevin. If I give you a piece of candy, I might take it, but my name is Kevin."
Wow.
I mean, I just love that. And I think that as I'm listening to you, and I don't know how much of this goes on in our community as a whole, but wouldn't that be a blessing, especially in this time where they're just trying to wipe us out, to bring our children to that place where they can be reminded of who they are, and strengthened for that, so that then when all this stuff is happening, they'll have the strength of the ancestors. And I don't think there's nothing like the strength of a young person who has not been knocked around by life yet. And they just come with their full chest. I just think, as you were talking and as you were, sharing with that whole section of the libationment and the meaning of libations in general, I just feel like, geez, this ought to be some way that we can programmatically, get more of our young boys, young children, period, but especially the young men, into where I want somebody to hit them on their chest and make them know, what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just so powerful. I'm so glad you explained that part, because I was confused. I didn't know. I didn't know it was
Yeah,
that.
that's that spirit right there. And
I'm
again,
gonna
as you're saying, and thinking about the future, we spoke about the Sankofa hermeneutic, and I've been talking about that in certain lectures, and the question about Africa's future, and in this in this Pan-African Renaissance moment that we're in, where clearly our ancestors are rising, and we're really on a Sankofa journey. And it's kind of permeating every space that we're in now. And so, I said that, Africa's future is its past.
Yes.
Right. And so when you're looking at, when you're speaking about the young boys and how, we're really trying to, return, reclaim, remember, literally remember, in its fullest sense back, into the African community. But we also know that, there was also some, when you're looking at the African traditions, you're looking at the institution of Christianity itself, and you could see how, you could see something like that and be like, oh, wait a minute, there's a certain line, right? That, whilst we're trying to go back and reclaim and reclaim our African identities and our ancestors, and still, and really, I would say reclaim the power, because there's so much power that we've yet to tap into. I was saying the last time, this was just surface level. You know what I mean? There's a lot more stages to this, but to see how we are going to have to wrestle with as we're getting closer to restoring who what had always been, as Reverend Damien said, this is nothing new. It's a continuation of what we've been doing, and kind of lost memory, and so trying to get that memory back. But so far we go with African spirituality, specifically before the institution of Christianity is like, all right, well, when does this stop being Christian? Right. And so, I always say it's always going to be important for us, whilst we're on the Sankofa journey, to be able to separate the faith, the biblical faith, from the institution, and recognize that, that's the only way we can truly reconcile with our own imago Dei, right? Our own image, and see our own image of God. So I wanted to really make it clear that this wasn't like I wasn't like mixing two unrelated systems or anything like that, right? This was just reuniting what really was historically separated, through slavery and colonization and all of that, and trying to bring it back and give a picture of what this looks like when we're actually in practice. I'm pretty sure, especially with the young folks that were at the conference, how they kind of took that and was like, what are the possibilities when we go this route? And some of the power that we could tap into, I think is going to be, as you're saying, the future as we move forward. So, Africa's future is its past, and the more this Sankofa journey is proving that.
With every conversation, I feel like this is like the first page of a multi-page conversation. I mean, this is so engaging. I want to ask Dr. Carruthers if she wants to say anything. And if so, come on up and let us see your face. And also from Dr. Michael Elam, he asks, what happens to the poured libation at the conclusion? He says, I know what you do with the water. What do you do with the gin?
Yeah, so that part. We initially when we were preparing the night before, I wasn't aware of where we were going to be, so so initially I had planned on pouring the libation as we pour it on the ground, but recognizing the space that we were going to be in, we decided to use the bowls. And the bowl, so once you use the bowls, what you're supposed to do is, after you pour the libation, it still has to touch the ground. So you take it outside. When I was talking to Reverend Dan, I was like, yo, do you think we should call everybody out? You know what I mean? Outside to pour. Like, nah, that's that's too much going on. We got more things to do. So it's like, all right, we'll just leave there. And then, but initially what you're supposed to do is you take that, whatever you poured in the bowl, and then you take it outside and you pour it outside. And again, it's very important to make sure that on the right side with the blessings and the ancestors, you pour it on this side, on your right side. And then with the bowl on the left for the enemies, you pour it on the left side. Make sure that they are completely separated on this side So that's what you're supposed to do after you pour the libation.
Okay, that's helpful. Dr. Carruthers, what do you have to say about you? I know you're into this. What do you have to share and add to this conversation?
Well, this is such a powerful conversation, and I am so humbled and grateful for the engagement of these points, because it really reflects the pivot, I think, that we are making, where we are demonstrating the strength, the wisdom, of the courage to engage in the Sankofa hermeneutic, as you've named it, Dr. Bouhairie. And one of the things that I hope we see and feel is that Pan-African spirituality is the through line, which allows us to leave our respective narrow visions of the faith in order to really engage in what it means to be human and to find the divine. And so, as I am reminded from this conversation of the powerful wisdom that Gayrod Wilmore, the partner of James Cone, gave us with this construct of Arita, I want to lift it up as a Yoruba word. My email address, many know, is Godiva@Arita. And people ask me what that means. Some people thought it meant Godiva. Some think it means Godiva chocolate. It doesn't at all. It means combining God and Iva at Arita. Arita being that divine table where you have multiple pathways to it. And so Gayrod Wilmore, God bless his soul, gave us this theological construct of Arita to suggest that through our Pan-African spirituality and experiences, we will meet the divine in our diversity. That becomes the challenge of the moment. And that is the challenge of the moment as we face these demons, this demonic spirit, those who continue to bring to us their efforts to really demonize us, to dehumanize us, and to make us go away. And we ain't going nowhere, and we are still here. And so I'm so filled with holy anticipation of the ways in which we have connected in this moment, connected in terms of the GodBox and in terms of Proctor, in terms of the installments and in terms of vision casting. And now, since we had the conference, Dr. Bouhairie has now gotten an official confirmation of legitimacy to call us all together in some very important ways in 2027. And so it is a culmination of us stepping up and making this pivot to do the hard work of what it's going to take for us to manifest ourselves as servants of the divine in relationship to Arita. So I would like you, son, to speak to that for a moment and just share what the possibility is, share the vision and mission of GodBox, and how the installment for me is not about me, the individual, but rather what we see for African futuring as it relates to moving us further along in terms of who we are and whose we are.
Thank you for that, Queen Mother. Yeah, it's we received an endorsement from the office of the President of Ghana, who, as those of us who've been paying attention to some of these monumental, historic, I wouldn't say, I'll use the word accomplishments that we've received from the leadership of Ghana as it relates to reparations and this kind of Pan-African Renaissance and kind of leading this way. Since the year of return with the last government, we as I said, we bridged the gap, and it really was a moment where we had the diasporans and continental Africans coming together really like never before. But what we did notice throughout this kind of reconciliation moment is that there still needs to be a lot of restoring and reclaiming. There's still a lot of trauma. There's still a lot of mutual suspicion. There's still a lot of healing that needs to be had whilst we are addressing some of the social, political, and social economic opportunities through dual citizenship and land, investment, or even religious cultural opportunities such as the installment ceremonies that are all part of the Sankofa journey, the Sankofa hermeneutic that is being played out in praxis. And so the government, realized that these conversations need to be had on a serious level, on where both sides of the Atlantic come together from a theological space and have more of a theological emphasis on some of these conversations. And so it's really historic because oftentimes the government wouldn't really even associate with any of this, but for them to endorse it, recognizing the sacred responsibility that needs to be attached to this kind of moment where we're all coming together is very powerful. Being kind of in the midst of this whole thing and seeing on both sides how all of this is going, I relate it to a moment where we bridge the gap, we come together, but our religious and spiritual leaders seems like they still on the mountaintop, still trying to get these sacred tablets. And in the meantime, we have our people who have come together and really, there's not a lot of leadership and kind of guiding anybody. So we have a lot of parties and a lot of reconciliation. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff together, but again, the spiritual guidance is not there. And so this endorsement was really a call upon all our religious and spiritual leaders, Pan-African leaders, to come together, bring those sacred tablets from the mountain, and kind of give some guidance towards this amazing moment that we're in, where it's really a Sankofa in praxis that's happening. And so we're really excited about the endorsement. We're really excited about the partnership that we have with Proctor and with our Queen Mother, and kind of spearheading this process for our people of faith.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Well, with all good things have to come to an end, and it's almost time to get off. But I want to first very deeply and gratefully thank both of you, Dr. Bouhairie and Reverend Damien. I am sure from the pieces of messages that I've been, I have a learning disability or something. I can't talk and look at the chat at the same time to get all of the questions. But from the pieces of questions that I've seen, I know that there is a whole lot more understanding and probing that people want. And so we will probably try to follow it up at some time with a deeper level or do something so that we can fill in the gaps. But I think that this initial conversation has answered some of the most immediate questions that people had, and I'm hoping that they will share their insights and what they've learned with other people. We will have this on our YouTube page within a couple of days, and so people can watch it. We encourage you to watch it and ask the questions there, because we'll get the questions wherever you put them, and we'll try to answer them. And if we can't answer them, Dr. Bouhairie, we're going to send them to you. We're going to send you the questions.
I'm ready to serve. I'm always ready.
Reverend Damien, it is clear that experience was just a powerful moment beyond words. I mean, when I think about it and I'm listening to you now and understanding what was going on, I just feel that was like an anointing that was put on you at that moment. And so listening to you talk about how before you got into all this, you talked and you prayed and you fasted and I think the ancestors said, okay, my brother, okay, I want you to exhale because we got you. And I think that's the feeling that I get after listening to this. So I want to thank you for your genuineness in leading Dr. Reverend Damien. There's a genuine something in you that is, I think that the ancestors are smiling on. And I want to thank you, Dr. Bouhairie, for what you did. And one day you're going to have to tell me everything that you said. I'm just saying.
I'll try. I'll try.
In our chat, people are talking about reparations. You see how this goes. It expands. The conversation just grows and grows and grows because there's so much in it. And some people in the chat were saying we need to talk about reparations, or reparations are needed. Well, our next conversation on May 18th will be around reparations, and our guests will be Robin Ruth Simmons, who is the founder of what's the name of it?
First Repair.
First Repair. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Reverend Robert
Turner.
I was going to say Carter, Reverend Robert Turner, who was one of our Micah cohort members, actually. And he's now the pastor of the Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, Maryland. But he walks 40 miles a month for the cause of reparations. And he and Robin Ruth Simmons have worked a lot together. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what he's doing, because I think there are things that people don't know that they can do and contribute to the whole conversation and the work of getting reparations. Robin Ruth Simmons' story is just phenomenal. You just need to see that. But anyway, so Walking and Working for Repair is what we're calling it, and it's going to be on the 18th of May. Tell your friends, tell your family, and join us in there, especially if you were in this conversation tonight and you start talking about reparations. I think that's the ancestors telling you to join this next conversation to extend your knowledge about what's going on and to be fed by ancestral wisdom and presence about how we can all be a part of that. So then the last thing I want to do before I give Reverend Damien our closing, the closing words, is that one of our trustees, the Reverend Dr. Teresa Smallwood, is facilitating in a project, and there's a survey that has been prepared. We are seeking this survey is this work is they're seeking to amplify the voices of Black progressive clergy and the project and the public square regarding the evolving landscape of LGBTQ inclusion. And so we're putting the link up for you to access it. Do we have the link up, Reverend Larita? Do we have the link? We can put the link up. So
It's in
maybe
the
you put it
chat.
in the chat already. My bad. But we want you to take that. There it is. We want you to take that, use that link and take the survey. It takes about 20 minutes. The answers are due, or the surveys are due by May 1st. So we want you to do that. Everything that we can do to help ourselves, we need to be doing. And that's one of the things that we can be doing to make sure that we're maximizing all the needs that we need to maximize on. So there is that. So that is the end of my talking on tonight. Reverend Damien, I want to give this to you. Reverend Dr. Queen Mother Iva Carruthers, thank you for being here. You always add so much to everything we talk about. Sometimes, but for any of you who have never read anything that she has written, talking about libations, you need to get a glass of wine and sit down and really, because the sister goes so deep, you have to just scratch your head. You think that you knew something, and then she takes you into levels and levels and levels of stuff that we all need to know. And I know Proctor, we all appreciate your wisdom and your scholarship. So thank you for being here and supporting this, and thank you for everything that you've done, for everything you taught me, everything you continue to teach all of us. Thank you so much for all of that. Reverend Damien, it's on you.
All right, amen. And we're going to be good stewards of everyone's time. And I echo those sentiments as Dr. Carruthers identifies herself as a sociologist, Pan-Africanist race woman, that we have all been blessed and benefited by, and her unapologetic commitment to Pan-Africanism, her relationship with Dr. Clark, which again, one of the most unique things, my relationship with Gus, and then knowing that obviously Gus used to go to see Dr. Clark with Malcolm, and then knowing that Dr. Carruthers had that intimate and unique relationship. So God uniquely orchestrating these things. So again, we remain so thankful for the unique and powerful ways in which God brings us across zip codes and area codes to be in community together to do this work. So we are so thankful for GodBox, so thankful for Dr. Gilbert, his spirit, right? It's his knowledge, but also his spirit, his openness, and his vision. And so we look forward to how we will continue to work with GodBox and look forward to the ways in which these conversations continue, and in the ways in which prayerfully we do some more immersion trips, and what that will look like and what that will mean. And so we remain grateful for all of you who joined us tonight, and some more updates from conference will be coming soon. But guess what? We cannot do this work of course, without your love and your support. But we also want to continue to invite you to partner with us as we are engaged in futuring. We're asking that you consider giving us $5, $10, $15 a month. Put us in your monthly budget. If this conversation was beneficial to you, if Proctor has been beneficial to you, if you still believe in the mission and vision of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, we know that economic realities are tight. We know gas, look, $5, $6. We keenly are aware of the rising costs. But small amounts, if we still got Hulu, if we still got Netflix, if we still got Amazon, even though I know some of us are canceling our subscriptions, say I catch up with y'all in 6 months. So maybe one of those subscriptions you may drop, but we want you to consider investing in our work as we continue to engage in the work of futuring, and as we continue to seek to try to combat erasure and eliminationism and disinformation and misinformation. And we're working on some things that will allow us to continue to engage in mission alignment, but also mission amplification in terms of using education to combat injustice, to combat the lies that we continue to see. So please consider sharing with us. And then if you know other people who've been benefited from Proctor, ask them would they consider putting us in their monthly budget or your organization's monthly budget, so that we can continue to do this work. We thank you again for joining us tonight. Thanks to our team, media team, Rita Logan and L. Julie Parker, to Reverend Tab, and to Reverend Sue, who continues to exhibit the kind of intentionality and sensitivity as a public theologian, as a preacher, pastor, and as a journalist who takes us seriously, takes our brain and our mind seriously, and the work that we do seriously. So we are grateful that you joined us tonight, and be on the lookout for some more updates coming soon. And we hope you will join us next month as we will continue to have some significant and powerful critical conversations. We have some other ones coming up for you that are going to be off the chain. And we want to continue to use this as a platform to empower, to inform, and to encourage at such a time as this. So I think there's nothing else. I think we want to be good stewards of our time on Monday night, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Reverend Sue, is that it?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the ancestors knew that the conversation is over because the dog just came out of her sedation.
That is our direct.
That's the cue right there.
That's our direct cue.
Thank you all. God bless you. We'll see you soon, and we'll see you
Thank
definitely
you.
on May 18th. Thanks. Take care.
God bless.
Good
God
night.
bless.
Blessings.
Blessings.